marathoners either go out too fast and hit the wall, or play too safe and leave minutes on the table. The difference often comes down to one simple thing: marathon pace. Knowing what it is and training your body to hold it can make or break your race. I'm Edward, sports scientist and ex-soccer player turned marathon runner, and in this video I'll show you exactly how to find your marathon pace and how to train it using a sports science approach. So what exactly do we mean when we talk about marathon pace? Marathon pace definitely isn't a sprint, and it's not jogging either. It should feel like a steady, controlled effort that you can hold for the marathon distance if you're well trained. Scientifically, marathon pace usually falls around 75 to 85% of your VO₂max, or about 85 to 90% of your threshold pace. That's the intensity where your body's working hard, but still relying mostly on aerobic metabolism, meaning you're burning both carbs and fats in a sustainable way without building up lactate too quickly. In other words, it's the sweet spot where you run fast enough to cover the 42 kilometers or 26 miles in a strong time, but controlled enough that you don't empty the tank too early. And that balance between speed and endurance is what makes marathon pace so important to get right. So how do you actually figure out your marathon pace? One of the most practical ways is to use a recent race result, like from a 10K or a half marathon, and plug it into a prediction calculator. However, the problem with many of the formulas is that they were built on elite runners. Research on over 2,000 recreational runners found that they usually predict marathon times at least 10 minutes too fast, and often more than that. So if you use this method, be conservative. Add a little buffer, because the marathon is a very different beast. Another approach to figure out your marathon pace is looking at the science and physiological benchmarkers. Consider VO₂max your engine and lactate threshold your red line. Running economy is how fuel efficient you are. Marathon pace typically sits just below your lactate threshold. So if you know your threshold pace, either from a lab or field test, or even if you estimate it, your marathon pace will usually be around 10 to 15% slower. You'll also hear guidelines based on heart rate to estimate marathon pace, where it often falls around 70 to 85% of your max heart rate. That's a useful ballpark in training, but the thing is, in real marathons, studies show that most recreational runners actually average closer to 89% of max heart rate once they settle into race pace. That's because of fatigue and cardiac drift, which is when your heart rate increases during prolonged exercise, even when your pace and the conditions remain the same. So while heart rate is a useful tool, it's not the whole story. At the end of the day, using the combination of a recent race result, your training data, and a sense of perceived effort gives you the most realistic number for marathon pace that you can actually hold on race day. When you know your marathon pace, the next step is to train your body to hold it. A very effective way is to actually practice marathon pace in training, because you become more efficient at the paces you regularly train at. That could mean a medium long run of 10 to 16 kilometers at marathon pace, or a long run where the last 8 to 12 kilometers are at marathon pace. So if you spend time at marathon pace in training, it will feel smoother and more economical on race day. You may also want to do tempo runs, often something around 30 to 60 minutes, which are steady efforts just below your lactate threshold. These are faster than marathon pace, but they raise your threshold so your marathon pace feels easier. Think of tempo runs as raising the ceiling, and marathon pace as the exact pace you will live in on race day. Running intervals at paces above your lactate threshold will also help raise your VO₂max and push your ceiling. We put so much emphasis on marathon pace training because it trains the exact systems you will rely on in the race. First, it improves fuel utilization. A 16-week marathon training study showed that recreational runners boosted their fat burning capacity by about 60%. That means you save glycogen and delay hitting the wall. Second, it improves your running economy. You use less oxygen at the same pace, and over weeks of training, marathon pace starts feeling more relaxed and sustainable. Finally, it builds mental confidence and pacing skill. By practicing marathon pace on both fresh and tired legs, you learn exactly how it should feel so you don't go out too fast on race day. Let's recap. Marathon pace usually sits just below your lactate threshold. It's the balance between speed and endurance. You can estimate it with recent races, training data, and effort, but don't rely on just one metric. And you train it with marathon paced runs, tempo and interval sessions, and long runs. If you nail this in training, Marathon pace stops being a mystery number, and you don't have to fear hitting the wall too soon or leaving minutes on the table. It becomes a rhythm your body knows and trusts, and it's how you'll run your strongest race.